Okay. Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for joining this conversation. And today we are going to be discussing about something जिसके हमने बहुत दृश्य देखे हैं और हम एक बहुत जाना माना चीज माना जाता है, the impact of the lockdown on workers, particularly migrant workers. तो इस विषय में we want to understand further कि माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स जो अलग अलग राज्यों में स्ट्रैंडेड हो गए हैं उनको क्या तकलीफ पहुंच रही है, हाउ आर स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स एंड सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट्स रिस्पॉन्डिंग, तकलीफें क्या जगह जगह से अलग होती है, क्या महाराष्ट्र में व्हाट काइंड ऑफ डिफिकल्टी इज इट वेरी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द काइंड्स ऑफ डिफिकल्टीज दैट स्ट्रैंडेड वर्कर्स इन द साउथ आर फेसिंग. तो उसके अलावा इससे बढ़कर भी वी वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट दिस हैज एन इम्पैक्ट in terms of not just the workers themselves, but in terms of the country, in terms of economy, and what it means for India over a much longer term. तो शुरुआत हम एक रिपोर्ट है जो कुछ दिनों पहले रिलीज की गई थी. इट इज फॉर द एब्रिविएशन इज इट्स अ स्वान रिपोर्ट. ये एक नेटवर्क है 100 वॉलंटियर्स का who've come together from different parts of the country, and they're known as the Standard Workers Action Network, Swan. ये शुरुआत हुई थी. There were some workers who were stranded in different parts of the country, and they started making distress calls, but these distress calls increased in so much in such magnitude that eventually this network has connected to almost 17,000 workers and 1,500 groups. और इन नेटवर्क का ये उद्देश्य था कि वो कॉल्स रिसीव करे, जिन लोगों तक जानकारी पहुंचा सकते थे वो पहुंचाए कि उनको मदद कहाँ मिल सकती है, कैसे मिल सकती है. This network also tried to raise some funds and made very small cash transfers as well to people to help them in this very dire situation. And 2 reports have been released by this network, जिसके मैं बस केवल कुछ आंकड़े आपके सामने रख के फिर उसके आधार पे ये चर्चा शुरू करना चाहूंगी. As per this report, through a conversation with almost, like I said, 17,000 stranded workers across the country, it came out that almost 50% of workers who had called had ration left for less than 1 day. Nearly 50% workers also were calling just on SOS because they had no food or no money. So unke kuch asks or requirements were nothing complicated. It was basic food, basic money. सरकार के जो relief arrangements थे to provide food and money, there were more than 4 out of 5 persons had not received rations in the second phase from government. Almost 65% of the workers that they interacted with had less than rupees 100 left on the day they had called. और even though central government ने एक circular के बाद एक circular निकाला कि all private employers should consider their employees as at work and should pay them their wages, the network found out through their calls that only 6% of the workers they contacted were actually paid during the lockdown. And all 99% of the workers who reached out were self-employed and had no other alternate source of income during the lockdown period. तो ये आंकड़े definitely बहुत ही it's beyond distressing, and I just want to first and foremost open out to 4 volunteers from that network who've joined us today: Neha, Shantanu, Preeti, and Nitish. तो मैं आपको बारी बारी से I will request you that you come in and in just about 2 minutes tell us, क्योंकि ये आंकड़े तो एक मैक्रो लेवल के हैं, लेकिन आपके जो regions है, आप I'm understood that you've been divided across different regions. आपके region में महत्वपूर्ण क्या समस्या निकल के आई, or what were the kinds of concerns that people were facing, what was the kind of response that was managing to reach them. So I'll start with Neha, please.
Yeah. So thanks, Rakshita. So I am, as Rakshita said, we are dividing in Swan, working in different zones. So I am looking at Delhi and Haryana zone specifically. So there have been around 745 cases altogether, Delhi and Haryana, which has been approximately 2,400 some migrant workers who have reached out to us from both the places. So there have been like Delhi does not stand alone. Delhi comes with NCR usually, right? So I can also share a bit about UP, the Noida cluster, because Gurgaon, Noida, and Faridabad, the three NCR areas, are the most affected areas, and these are the main clusters from where we have been getting calls. In Delhi also, there have been few clusters which emerged gradually. So, like if I go specific to Haryana, so Gurgaon mein there have been this cluster called Khansa, IMT Manesar. Faridabad is also there in Haryana. Charsa Gaon is also there. So these are the main areas, and Noida, of course. Apart from this, in Delhi there have been some clusters like Gandhinagar. If I don't know, people know the geography. So it's somewhere near Shadra and Dilshad Garden, so east northeast side of Delhi. So Gandhinagar has been one, Mangolpuri and Sultanpuri is another, Narela is there, and Sagarpur. So these are the main clusters which have emerged in Delhi and Haryana. So for reaching out to people, gradually in the beginning we were getting calls like one or two families or some laborers who are stranded. As and when we saw that there's a pattern and there are most workers stranded in these clusters, so we also tried to reach out or to work in a more sustainable way. So we reached out to government and see if there could be some intervention that can happen. In some cases it succeeded, in some cases it didn't. Most of the cases it didn't succeeded. So civil society organizations have been helpful for us. Especially in Gurgaon, there's an organization, Gurgaon Nagrik Ekta Manch, that has been helpful quite a lot for reaching out. Faridabad and other areas, we have tried to reach out and connect to helplines. In one case, we did, yes, we went, got through it, but and were able to, get the help. But in other cases, that's not the case. In Delhi, there have been feeding centers are open. So one major issue was helping people to map to the closest feeding center. That was one struggle because many people don't have smartphones and all. And there was also a way of doing temporary e-ration cards. So we also help people to register on the e-ration card because if they don't have smartphones, so we used to do it for them and send them the code. So it worked out in some cases, it didn't work out in some cases. But we are also trying to channelize that in case it hasn't worked out. So we are also trying to reach out to the government to help that facilitate that process. So yeah, mostly it's been like this. And the people who have reached out to us are mostly daily wage laborers, right? राजमिस्त्री का काम करते हैं, पीओपी का काम कर रहे हैं. There are people जो टेलरिंग में हेल्प कर रहे हैं. The kind of work that women are engaged, for example, Gandhinagar area, it's a area where garment industry is there, like clothing का काफी काम होता है. तो women are mostly engaged in work like जो धागा होता है उसको काटने में और उसका रील बनाने में. So they get paid per piece or something like that, which made it like 2,000 2,500 rupees per month. So they are not really a family income. Their husbands are working, but this is the kind of work women are also engaged in some cases. Zari ke kaam mein. So yeah, mostly it's this in Delhi and Haryana.
ओके, थैंक यू नेहा. और आपको फर्दर डिटेल में और भी बहुत ही टाइम है, तो अब वील डेफिनेटली हियर मोर डिटेल्स. शांतनु, अगर आप हमें बताएं आपके रीजन में कैसा.
Yeah, sure. So I was part of South Zone, like Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka. So, I mean, as Rakshita already mentioned a lot about stats, that many people don't have less than 100 rupees, they don't have ration, which is true in this region too, which is very similar. So the people who have we cater, they primarily came from Jharkhand, Bihar, Bengal, and Uttar Pradesh. So you understand when people coming from that state to the state like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, the language completely changes, and the number of people who speak their local language are practically very low. That adds extra dimension to the problem. So they are not considered as local, and that thing really came out. For example, even when there was some government help, let's say they are distributing ration to somewhere, It seems that at many places they got discriminated. They didn't get ration because they didn't have, let's say, local ration card, or their Aadhaar number or address in their Aadhaar card was of their home state. So which was, I believe, quite a lot problem. Also because these states are quite far from the states, their home states. So travel was another problem. Buses cannot cater it, and we know the status of the train. Even we can't get any information. Forget about them. We have received multiple requests lately that, okay, we like to go back. Can you do something? Can you? They are quite desperate, and because they are here for last more than a month now, and without much food and money, and so they really want to go back to their family at least. But there was no concrete information available, even if very few trains have started. And recently, I heard that Karnataka even stopped those trains. So yeah, situation was really desperate for them. So travel was uncertainty. They were not considered as local, so many government help they didn't receive. Although if you see in the report, the government trend was encouraging in terms of government support. They are giving ration as the lockdown is progressing, but again, migrant workers were still facing a lot of issues. And also, in many cases, for example, in Tamil Nadu, recently, uh, in many cases, district administration did pitch in after a lot of follow up and all. Uh, and after receiving Rasha, some people still called me, and I was like, okay, you got Russian a couple of days ago, and still calling us. What's the matter? So they said that, sir, उन्होंने सिर्फ चावल दिया है हमको, वो भी टूटा हुआ मोटा, कैसे खाएं उसे? And it's just true. I mean, if someone gives me just rice, plain rice, what will I do with that? They do not have any money. Should I just boil and eat it? So yeah, these were the problems. Even the quantity and quality was an issue, even in say so. Even if
Right.
some people received it, and recently we also came out about the, for example, in today only actually I came to know about a case where they were working in some kind of factory, and they didn't get money for even their work, let's say during the March. They wanted to go home back, they wanted to go back home. So, and when they asked for money today, the employer threatened them. They said, you cannot go back, you have to work here. I will not give any money to you, and all those things. So they were really desperate. Now they don't have money, they cannot go out. Now the trains are not working, they cannot go to their family. Employer is threatening to evict them. Now they don't even have the home. So
Right.
yeah, these were a lot of disturbing trends, but some
Hmm.
good trends also we have seen that
शांतनु,
regarding.
इसमें मैं अभी थोड़ा आई जस्ट वांट टू मेक यू पॉज ऑन दैट एंड पॉजिटिव
Sure,
ट्रेंड्स
please.
का भी हम सुनेंगे. We'll just hear from
Right.
Nitish and Preeti and then Jayati, and then we can open up to a lot more things.
Sure. Thanks,
So
Rakshita.
thank you. Preeti, आपसे हम सुनेंगे and just 2 minutes an overview of what has emerged from your region.
थैंक यू रक्षिता एंड हेलो एवरीवन. मैं थोड़ा सा बताना चाहूँगी हमारा स्वान टीम कैसे काम कर रहा है, किस तरीके से हमारा मैकेनिज्म है. तो बेसिकली हम कोई भी इंफॉर्मेशन आती है, हम फर्स्ट इंफॉर्मेशन लेते हैं. उसके बाद हम एक नीड असेसमेंट करते हैं कि जो भी अगर किसी भी वर्कर्स का किसी का भी कॉल आया है तो नीड असेसमेंट करते हैं, क्या ज़रूरत का लेवल है, कितनी उनकी कितना उनको चाहिए, अर्जेंट केस है, एसओएस केस है, तो उसके बेसिस पे हम कॉल लेते हैं. अगर कोई एसओएस केस है और हम उनको बिल्कुल खाने का राशन जो है उनके पास 1 दिन का ही है या 1 दिन का भी नहीं है, तो हम उनको इमीडिएट ट्रांसफ़र के लिए रेकमेंड करते हैं. अगर ऐसा है कि 3-4 दिन का खाना है, तो हम कोशिश करते हैं लोकल संस्थाओं से और लोकल सरकारी संस्थाओं, लोकल ऑर्गनाइज़ेशन और लोकल गवर्नमेंट बॉडीज़ से कॉन्टैक्ट करके उनको राशन और भी तरह की सपोर्ट उनको उपलब्ध कराएँ. और जो हमारा अगर हम उनको जो भी हमें उन्हें सुविधाएँ अगर मॉनेटरी टर्म्स में देना होता है, तो हमारे पास जो डोनर्स हैं, हमसे डायरेक्ट उनको अकाउंट से उनसे कनेक्ट करके उनको ट्रांसफ़र कराते हैं. जैसे नेहा और शांतनु ने बताया कि दे आर टेकिंग केयर ऑफ दिल्ली, हरियाणा एंड साउदर्न ज़ोन, वैसे ही मैं उन स्टेट्स को देखती हूँ जिन स्टेट से ये माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स आते हैं. छत्तीसगढ़, वेस्ट बंगाल, मध्य प्रदेश, राजस्थान, बिहार, उड़ीसा, आसाम, मणिपुर, ओवरऑल ऑल नॉर्थ ईस्ट ईस्टर्न स्टेट. तो मेरे तरफ जो एक आपको मतलब एक अलग तरह का ऑब्जर्वेशन, एक अलग तरह का ट्रेंड देखने को मिलता है कि जो कॉल्स का नेचर भी है थोड़ा अलग है. उसको मैं आगे चल के आप लोगों से और डिस्कस करूँगी कि क्या नेचर है. काफ़ी लोगों ने अपनी अलग-अलग पंच लाइन अपने पेन को बताया है, वो एक काफ़ी अ, पेनफुल है सुनने के लिए भी और हमारे लिए भी क्वेश्चन है कि हम किस तरह से मदद करें उनकी. So yeah, overall these are the calls we have received. Apart from that also, we have also tried to connect them with the government people as well as the लोकल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, जिसमें हमें कुछ तरह की सफलता मिली है, कहीं नहीं सफलता ज़्यादातर नहीं मिली है, थोड़ी ही बहुत सफलता मिली है हमें. तो इस तरह का है. और जहाँ तक सवाल है कि किस तरह की वर्कर्स का कॉल आ रहा है, मतलब क्या नेचर ऑफ माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स है, एक बड़ा प्रश्न है. तो ज़्यादातर जिस तरह के कॉल हमारे जोन ने रिसीव किया वो अधिकतर डेली वेजेस के हैं, ब्रिकलिन भट्ठे में काम करते हैं, गारमेंट में काम करते हैं, मतलब उनका जो कहते हैं कि उनका जो उनका मिलने का जो उनकी सैलरी का पैटर्न है वो डेली वेजेस पे है. कुछ लोग हफ्ते में मिलता है या कहीं कहीं कुछ ही लोग का मंथली है. ज्यादातर रोज का खाना, रोज का कमाना और रोज का खाना वाला स्थिति है. तो ये ओवरऑल सिचुएशन है. इसके बाद में बाकी जो पैटर्न्स है हमारे ग्रुप के, जो भी जिनके कॉल्स आए हैं, जिनकी कहानियां केसेस हैं, मैं आगे एक्सप्लेन बेहतर तरीके से करूंगी.
Shukriya, Preeti. Thank you very much. Nitish?
Yeah, hello. Thank you. I work in West Zone, which includes Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Goa. Uh, so uh, when you look at Goa and Gujarat, it has almost been catered to by NGOs and government. We'll look at it more properly when we go ahead in the discussion. But Maharashtra specifically is behaving very differently. So when you look at the number of calls that you have been getting from different workers, out of 17,000 workers that we have catered to, almost 5,000 people have called us from Maharashtra, and uh, and about 43% of people overall who have called us are from Bihar. They're they're stranded from they're originally from Bihar, and 59% of the people who have called us are daily wage workers. Even 11% are uh, people who used to be in domestic help or who used to be drivers. And so when you look at the overall figures, तो अगर आप स्वान की 32 days and counting वाली रिपोर्ट भी देखेंगे, तो आप you'll see कि overall data has been improving. People who were getting food earlier and people who are getting food now, the percentage has increased, but it is very different in Maharashtra. Uh, so by April 14th, 94% of people hadn't received any ration from government, and that increased to 96% in on by 26th April. And when it comes to not getting cooked food, that also increased from 72% to 76% from April 14th to April 26th. And when you look at Maharashtra, so all the areas apart from Mumbai, they are being catered to by, let's say, NGOs and sometimes by government helpline numbers. But Mumbai is just out of control. So in Mumbai, none of the BMC helpline works, and areas like Mira Road to Nala Supara, Sayan, Kulla, Villa Parle, Jogeshwari, these are those areas that are not being either catered by government or NGOs because the way the area is and because they have become containment zones right now, even NGOs can't intervene and help them because they are not being led to. Uh, and and then there are, I mean, I'll go properly with few incidents about Mumbai, but then there are few areas like Dharavi where where certain organizations, local organizations who are giving them cooked food, but it's so irregular. So they get food for one day, and for next 2 or 3 days they have no idea. So so and then comes police brutality that even if government is providing cooked food, uh, if people go out, they are getting beaten up. So they're afraid of going out. So they call us and we tell them that, see, we know for a fact that your area is getting cooked food, but they say, but we can't go because we know people in our locality are getting beaten. So these are major issues, and right now, a major issue with all the people who are stranded is that they all want to go home, and they have to pay. I mean, I'll cite incidents about certain areas about the kind of money they're being asked to later, but all the areas are being asked to pay, and they don't have that kind of money.
Right. So shukriya to Neha, Shantanu, Preeti, and Nitish, and also shukriya for giving time to this initiative and volunteering and being of so much support and resource to so many stranded workers. Abhi, I just also want to bring in Professor Jayati Ghosh. into this. Jyoti एक development economist है, एक अर्थशास्त्र है. वो economics, public policy, human rights के issues में पढ़ाती भी है, लिखती भी है, और India में और abroad में भी. And most importantly for all of us, she's also a great friend to many campaigns, including the Right to Work, the Right to Food campaigns, and always comes in to help us and guide us and show us a bigger picture when we need to see it. So, Jyoti, I would now request you to, even just hearing from this and also your own thoughts about all of this is happening, what it means for India as of today and economy over a much longer term, if we could just hear from you.
Thank you, Rakshita. And I also really want to thank all of four of you, Neha, Shantanu, Preeti, Nitish, Rakshita, all of you, every single volunteer in Swan. I think all of us are really benefiting from all the work that you're doing. And it's very, very important for us. It's the kind of thing to know that young people like you are doing this is what keeps us going, actually. Thank you. So, shukriya main ada karna cha rahi hu. So, what is very clear, I think we have to remember this, we know it implicitly, but we have to keep reminding ourselves, is that these migrants are the basis of both rural and urban economies. This urban economy would not survive without these migrants. Okay, they are the ones who have built the cities, they are the ones who are servicing the cities, they are the ones who are providing the labor for all of the manufacture in the cities. So they are absolutely critical. And now we are realizing how critical, because they are almost, as we've seen in Karnataka, that there are attempts to keep them forcibly because they are so essential under any means. Okay, so but they are absolutely crucial for the urban economy, but they are also crucial for the rural economy, because these remittances have actually enabled a lot of the rural economy to survive, जहाँ पे agriculture आजकल उतना पैसा नहीं देती है. विशेष करके जहाँ आप बता रहे थे ना, बिहार, यूपी वगैरह वगैरह, actually even the agricultural households depend on one family member who has gone for the remittances to come to enable that whole family to survive, and for that agriculture even to survive in that area. So these are absolutely crucial. Both these economies will collapse when we actually do not allow these migrants to survive, flourish, and to be enabled to do their work. तो ये तो पहली बात है. दूसरी बात ये है कि बिल्कुल ठीक है, सरकार ने कहा कि हाँ आपको पैसा देनी चाहिए अच्छी. We know that that is not going to happen, क्योंकि कोई फॉर्मलाइजेशन नहीं है, किसी के पास कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं है, किसी के पास कोई लिखित रूप से वो भी नहीं है कि वो actually he is employed with somebody. But also we also know that many are medium and small enterprises who cannot afford to pay beyond a month or 2 months. तो हो सकता है कि कुछ लोग जानबूझ के नहीं दे रहे हैं जिनके पास पैसा है, मगर we also know that there are many small and micro enterprises who really are also stuck without getting any incomes over this period, and so they are unlikely to pay. So in other countries, what has happened is that the government has provided a minimum. That is why that has to be an essential demand. The government has to provide, because इन लोगों की नौकरी क्यों गई, इनकी रोजगारी क्यों चली गई, क्योंकि सरकार ने कहा कि आप कर नहीं सकते हो क्योंकि ये बीमारी है. So the government has destroyed their capacity to earn. It is incumbent on the government to compensate them. Okay, so that I think is the second critical point we have to remember. It's not the job of NGOs or civil society organizations or charity. It is the job of the government. And it is the right of these people to get their minimum livelihood for this period, because they have been deprived of it by an action of the government. ये भी हमें याद रखना है, ज़रूरी बात है. The other thing that we have to remember, though, is you see that the state governments are definitely responding in very different ways, and it was mentioned Maharashtra is significantly worse than some of the others. Kerala has stood out in terms of the better treatment and on all of that, but all the state governments have got no money right now. किसी के पास कुछ पैसा नहीं है, राज्य सरकारों के पास. Okay, we have got zero money on the part of the state governments, because the central government unbelievably has not transferred the kinds of things it has to. It has not transferred even for the rural employment guarantee. It has not even transferred the free food rations that were promised 40 days ago. If you remember the package, 5 kilo गेहूं या चावल 5 kilos per person. Even that amount, only less than half has been transferred to the state governments. And other money also has not been transferred. The state governments are owed 30,000 crore of GST compensation from last year. That has not come. And of course, this time, they have zero money that they are able to collect themselves because there's no economic activity. So the tax revenues that they used to collect, the GST taxes that they used to collect, they are getting probably 1/10 of what they would have got last year. In fact, several of the chief ministers have said this. In Delhi, they used to get more than 3,000 crore. Last month, they got 350 crore. In Kerala, they got less than 300 crore. In many states, basically, they are not getting any money at all. So, in fact, it is true that migrants in their place of origin and their place of destination will blame the state government because that is the immediate port of call. But it's not really, in that sense, the state government's fault. They are completely cash strapped. And they have a hard budget constraint. Their checks bounce if they overspend beyond their constraint. So it is also a problem of the central government denying the state governments this minimum money. And that, I think, is something we have to highlight, that the central government must provide the money for these migrants. This is a national problem created by a national policy. And it is only the central government that has the facilities, has the money to actually do this, to enable the migrants to survive. I just want to highlight some of the things that came out. I think they're very, very interesting, and I would like to hear more from all of them about the details. But I think there are a couple of issues that really deserve much more discussion. One, I think some of you raised this, the issue of women migrants. And not just women migrants, but the issue of women in general in these areas and the specific problems they face. And partly in whether they have even more difficulty in getting access to food, reaching the areas they can get, let us say, community kitchens or whatever, cooked food possibilities, residential possibilities, physical security problems, because many of them would also have been effectively thrown out of their places of residence. So I think little focus on what has been happening to women migrants and what specific policies we need to demand for their care and concern. Another is that we need access to food and health. I think all of you mentioned this, independent of location. वो राशन कार्ड कहीं पे है, हम और कहीं पे है, तो वो राशन नहीं मिलेगा. तो ऐसा उपाय निकालना होगा where people are just, anybody who wants is just given the food. We have to think of a system, a local level system, where anybody who is hungry and who needs it is just provided. I mean, broadly like a langar of either cooked or uncooked. And a lot of this has to be much more available locally, that is near where they can access. जो अभी शायद नीतीश ने कहा कि वो पास में नहीं, नीतीश या शांतनु ने कहा ना कि वो दूर है, तो इसीलिए they cannot even get to the point where they would get the cooked food. And of course, the quality issues, all of that is a different issue, but that is related to the fact that the state governments also have no money. That all comes back to that thing of the fundamental resource constraint of the states. एक बात है, सब कोविड के बारे में we have forgotten about all other health issues. And I would like to know what is happening to other health concerns. What is happening, for example, to immunization of the children of the migrants? What is happening to reproductive health of the women migrants? What is happening to other concerns, TB, other infectious diseases, other non-infectious diseases? Are they able to get treatment? Are they able to even think about how to improve those? Are they even getting medicines for those? So, you know, we really have to remember that if this is a public health disaster, it refers to all public health, not just one disease. So in treating one disease, are we destroying the health of people in other areas? And what should we do and what should we demand to ensure that other health concerns are not forgotten? एक बहुत interesting बात उठाई about this lack of integration because of language and culture. I think that's a very important point. और यहाँ पे एक जो मतलब positive example है केरला में, जैसे उन्होंने volunteers निकाले हैं who speak the language of the migrants. So I think it's important for the state governments, the local governments, the municipalities and others to actually bring in volunteers who can speak the language, who can understand the specific difficulties, and who can provide some ability for the migrants to relate to the others. So maybe this also is a demand that we must think of. There's another issue which is about containment zones, and I think Nitish brought that out, especially with respect to Dharavi. But we're going to see this more and more, क्योंकि ये प्रॉब्लम तो खत्म तो नहीं हुआ, ये तो बढ़ेगी. और हमें ये भी पता है कि क्योंकि कुछ इस बीच में कुछ किया गया नहीं गया to actually contain the disease, जैसे ही थोड़ा थोड़ा खुलेगा, it is going to get much worse. So there will be more containment zones, and so there will be these terrible extreme lockdowns in particular areas. तो वहाँ पे migrants की हालत को हम देखें भी कैसे और संभाले भी कैसे. So we need to think of specific demands for the migrants who are stuck in containment zones, which is, that number is only going to grow. So these, and then of course finally this issue of the transport and the obscenity that migrants are being made to pay for their transport. And of course, because there are very few trains going, I'm sure the black market rate is even higher. I'm sure the migrants are also being forced to pay large bribes or something to get onto those trains. So we need to actually ensure that that process of allowing them to return to their homes with dignity is something that we consider. So these are just my preliminary thoughts, but I would love to hear more from all of them.
Yes, thank you so much, Jayati. And really, this is the perfect segue to move from region-specific issues kya hai to actually what it's looking like in terms of a bigger picture. And even I'm really wanting to hear a lot more from this team. So I propose कि मैं आपको थोड़े एक 3-4 ऐसे सवाल पूछूंगी एंड आप अपनी feel free to jump in with stories or with anecdotes or with what you think, but also connect something that's extremely local to what it's appearing to be, looking at a larger scale. So I really do want to start off with Jayati ji ने एक बहुत ही important मुद्दा उठाया कि yes, workers have been affected. Yes, migrant workers out of that have been affected the worst. And then particularly in terms of women, what are the kinds of hardships that are being faced by women? If we could really know from some of you, if you've been aware of some instances where women have had to face more hardship than the others, if you have any stories.
Yeah, I think the primary cases I have observed is many women were pregnant, so accessing those health centers and even getting, for example, they're not even getting money to eat these days. So getting money for medicines and access. I mean, I think in case of pregnancy, you need a lot of things. I mean, to you have to be taken care of. So of course they are not getting any of those. At least many of them were not. So what we did, we tried to give them some money for medicine and miscellaneous, so that they can manage something. Uh, Apart from this, I personally did not. Uh, I did not get any case where there were security issues as such. Many of them were living with the family, so at least there were some people. But there was definitely some case where husband is alcoholic, and these, even, for example, although they did not directly share with me everything, but I can see that why they are mentioning it was probably some abuse and all, which must have maybe increased right now. So these were, yes, indeed the problems. Primarily, I will say the pregnant women did face a lot of problems in this situation.
Right.
And right now, even, and as Jayati Ghosh talked about, there are other health concerns too. But these days, people are afraid to even go to hospital, even if they, let's say, have some fever, and so they think, okay, government will take us to the quarantine center, and situation is even bad there. So even if they have something, they won't come up with that. That was a general trend what I observed.
नेहा आप कुछ जोड़ना चाहते थे?
Yeah. So actually, with respect to this women issue that's happening, so one is, as Shantanu said, about reproductive related issues, right? So this is happening that we have also encountered people who are pregnant, women, and have not been able to get a medical checkup done. So the lockdown started when they were in 7th month, and now it's 8th month, and the baby also happened in some cases. So in some cases, the baby happened at night in the house. It just happened, right? She couldn't get any help and anything. So but they had mentioned to us earlier that the women is expecting and all. So we have provided money beforehand, and then later the lady called us back saying, "Didi, आपको तो बताना था ना कि हमें बच्ची हुई है." So these emotional bonds are also happening. There are stories where people have called me also saying कि आप लोगों से बात करते हैं तो हौसला मिल जाता है, because at least someone is picking up call. There is some helpline where we call and there is a response. At least we heard. So there have been cases where they thought that we are from the government and they have just given us back कि आप लोग सरकार से आप हमारी मदद क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं and all. So then I explained to them and they were like, okay, ठीक है, आप लोग भी काम कर रहे हैं, मदद कर रहे हैं. So this emotional need is very much required at this moment. I have personally met, spoken to two to three families who have come to AIMS to Delhi to get a treatment done, an eye thing or something else. But now they have been given a date in June or July, and they have nowhere to go. They're like, ये तो किसी ने हमें मदद करके दे दिया एक कमरा रहने के लिए. So there are these cases also coming up. There are cases, as Shantanu said, women are being abused. That's also there. Many a times when I speak to male migrant workers, when I ask them who all are there in your family, please give me your names of the people. They just miss out telling the name of their wives, which just shock me at times. I'm like, how can this happen, right? So be it any man, it's happening. So yeah, these are the cases that we have encountered.
I mean, please feel free to add on even further if with more of these questions coming. If you want to add to something previous, please do feel free. The other thing that I wanted to understand from you all was also the difference in response, like which Jayati had mentioned, which you all had also mentioned. Jaise ki we heard from Nitish that particularly in Bombay, Maharashtra, the situation was very dire. But in your regions, did you see some states doing better than the other? And why was that? Or what did they do that showed more compassion or respect or sensitivity? And so just to hear a couple of those examples, if you can share.
I think Karnataka government is, as we can see in the report, also they are the kind of relief they are providing is increasing as the lockdown is increasing, and even, for example, Bangalore was in red zone and it's completely locked down. Uh, at least I personally did not experience any restriction in movement as soon as I'm telling the authorities, okay, we are going for help and all. There were no issues regarding that. So they were also showing compassion. We also met some COVID warriors. I mean, who are so there's a some website which is started by government, and you can just register and you can help in whatever way possible. So we met some of them, and they are actually working with, let's say, local block education officers. We met them. They identified few families which are, which are let's say coming from Rajasthan, and they are living roadside. They don't have any document, neither bank account nor any document. They cannot speak local language. So that block education officer has identified those 25 families and came to that local warrior, to COVID warrior, and then he came to us. Can you help us? So these stories definitely was a positive one, and I think a lot of like this is happening at least in Bangalore, urban area. I can see that at least in Bangalore, and a lot of NGOs are also active. So
Okay. Any other states?
Yeah, so about Goa, so what we have been also regularly doing is that we have been tweeting if there are some certain cases that, let's say, there are 100 standard workers or 150 standard workers, and we just can't cater to them monetarily. So we have also been tweeting, and when it comes to Goa, the Goa government has been really responsive. So what they usually do is, so what happened on 21st of April was we got to know about uh, around 150 standard workers in Gopal Nagar in Porogam, and we knew that we cannot just cater to them uh, through money that we have. So we just tweeted about them, and then government tweeted back saying that just give us detailed location and we'll get back to them, and they got ration that day only. So in that way, Goa has been really good. They reply back to our tweets. They text us personally on the Twitters, and so yeah, Goa is really nice, and same has been in some cities of Gujarat, not all. So, uh, so we have been getting a lot of calls from Surat, And what's happening in Surat is the people are not provided with rations, but they are being provided with cooked food regularly. And Ajivika, one of the NGOs in Surat which are working rigorously, they have been helping us a lot with that. But yeah, Surat is also very well sorted when it comes to providing food.
Yeah, that's a bit of a surprise given everything we're seeing and hearing about Surat, but cities are big and it is interesting to know such different realities can exist in one city itself. Neha, do you want to come in with any examples of how certain states have done better than the other?
So, yeah, in the beginning, I think Nitish already mentioned about Goa and Kerala, we all are hearing already, right? So, in the beginning, Haryana government numbers have also responding. So, like, I have also, like, there was this one case that I was dealing with. So, there were some people stuck in a place in Gohana, and just a minute. Yeah. So I have reached out to SDM office, and they gave me another number. So I was in my mind, I was like, they're just going to keep directing me to numbers maybe. But thankfully, the second number said that we will work it out. So they connected the group of people in that particular village to the respective pradhan and patwari, and I was still very not sure that if that help will be reached out to these people or not. So after half an hour, I just called them back to check has the pradhan contacted you, and so he was like, हाँ मैडम वो यहाँ आ गए हैं और वो हमसे पूछ रहे हैं कितने लोग हैं और क्या क्या जरूरत चाहिए. But after that one particular case, we have not been able to get through in Haryana also. So we are reaching out to civil societies.
Preeti, thank you. I think there was some technical issue, so you couldn't join. But right now, we were just talking about given all of your experience in different regions, if you can give us one example or two examples of did some states respond better than the others, and if you have any example that you want to share, please do share with us.
Yeah, thank you, and sorry for my bad network. I was on and off throughout the. So yeah, in terms of, yeah, definitely there are a lot of. I mean, I would put up my things in a certain you can say patterns which I have we our all group has noticed or and observed. The one is that because my reason is mainly where the migrant workers go to other state like Bihar, Jharkhand. So what we have seen the late April, we have started getting calls from the families, the families who are dependent on these migrant workers, who's because they were giving the money and that's the whole family household used to run. तो एक बहुत बड़ा पैटर्न आया लेट अप्रैल के बाद कि ये फैमिलीज को जरूरत होने लगी एक तरीके से सपोर्ट और फाइनेंशियल हेल्प की. तो वी यूज टू चेक आपके पास राशन है, तो दे वर लाइक मैडम जी राशन तो है बट पैसा चाहिए और भी चीजें जरूरतें होती हैं एंड दैट्स pretty valid because they said कि राशन तो मिल गया बट हमको और चाहिए जो because जो पैसा हमारा आता था हमारे जो हमारे पति थे भाई थे father थे they were not anyways anymore sending the money and now we need some support in terms of that. That's the one pattern we have seen shifting from late April onward, like after you can say 1 month of lockdown, that we have started getting much more call from the families who are already much more in distressed situation because also they were this thing that whatever the saving they had they already given to the workers because वहां पे उनके पास पैसा नहीं था तो काफी कुछ सेविंग उसमें चली गई just to survive every day. That's the one thing. Second, also one thing was I mean that came with so many calls from all over the places the zone we are covering, that dignified life, like I mean when they were calling us they were like कि मैडम आपसे बोलना नहीं चाह रहे हैं, हमको समझ में नहीं आ रहा कैसे हम आपसे सपोर्ट मांगे. Like they were very hesitant to ask even support, not all but many of them, that कि हमको समझ में नहीं आ रहा, आपको जो समझ में आया जिस तरह से सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं करने. So that whole idea of dignity is very much over there, that they were not able to ask but they are in the situation where they can even die if they don't get money and support. So most of the calls were like they were not very confident to ask money and any support also, that in terms of ration they were okay but not for that, and they were like काफी देर के बाद मैं पूछती थी तो देन दे सेड कि आपको जो सही लगता है मैडम, जिससे हम थोड़ा सर्वाइव कर सके उतना आप दे दीजिए। एंड वन एक कोट मैं पढ़ना चाहूंगी जो एक माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स ने बोला था। ही सेड कि मुझे कभी नहीं लगा था कि हम परदेश में हैं, और आज हमें लग रहा है हम परदेश में हैं, और आज हम निर्भर हैं लोगों पे, और हम खुद के अपने हाथ पैर चला के कमाने वाले लोग थे, मगर आज हमें लग रहा है हम अपने ही देश में पराए हैं। तो that was the one you can say that he said, and I noted down and that I read it for you all. And in terms of one interesting pattern is also coming for, again I'm telling you the zone I have told in starting. I mentioned that West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, all these are very specific to those zones. I mean, so there are a lot of distress is passing from migrant workers to other zones. So we are also we call from students. We also got call from you can say that people, the salesmen, and the workers were working in some sari shop and garment shop. So they were saying that there, and it was a genuine cause. When we do in need assessment, we try to talk to the workers in a very detailed manner so we can understand their requirements and their pain in terms of in our own capacity. So some of them said that because whatever the money they have saved, it has been exhausted, and now there is no source of income, everything has been shut down because of lockdown. It was every month, suppose 7-8 thousand were coming, they were managing, and now actually they need support. So, and they were, again, as I said, the dignified right to have a dignified life, as we all are having. So they do. So I mean, so that was something very hesitant, but still they were seeking support on that. And we did try in our own capacity, as I explained to you, कि हम स्वान में किस तरह से कोशिश कर रहे हैं सपोर्ट करने की, तो उस मैकेनिज्म के थ्रू हमने किया है. And this travel thing, state-wise thing was wanted as you started the question. So state-wise, one thing we got it very. So West Bengal is doing terrible. Sorry, I'm using the word, but it is terrible because a lot of calls from West Bengal workers we got stranded in a Jharkhand and different part of it, and we had tried all of our resources in our zone, and no response, zero response, no helpline number, no control room number, nodal officers number, nothing. And also few of the workers we have talked, so when they were crossing from Jharkhand border to West Bengal border, they have been beaten brutally. So उनको जाने नहीं दिया गया. एंड अभी झारखंड में हमारे कुछ वर्कर्स से बात हो रही है, तो आगे अगर मुझे भी टाइम ज्यादा लग रहा है तो मैं कुछ एक नैरेटिव सुन के बताने चाहूंगी, बट आई थिंक रक्षिता इज स्माइलिंग, सो आई शुड स्टॉप ओवर हियर.
No, I do want to hear, and I think again, because this conversation is continuing, so please do add your stories because these are not really stories. This is what's happening, and so much can be understood with one phrase somebody said कि अभी लग रहा है कि हम परदेश में आ गए हैं. I mean, it sums up everything together. Jayati, before I move on to the next question, is there something you want to add on certain states' performance vis-a-vis the other?
Well, I don't know enough, and of course I haven't been able to go anywhere, but I have heard reports that in addition to Kerala, Chhattisgarh and Odisha have also been doing reasonably well. I would like to know if there any information that you have on this. But this is from people in Chhattisgarh and in Odisha who have reported that things are slightly better there. So perhaps it is, I mean, these are all very complicated. It's never always one thing. And we heard how even in the city of Mumbai you can get, or in the city of Surat, you can get very, very different responses depending on even the local authorities and so on. But overall, it seems that it's possible that these state governments are doing slightly better. And Kerala, we all know, is among the best in that sense. The one thing I do want to just emphasize, and it came out very beautifully in that quote of Preeti's, this is such a betrayal of the working class. And I would say it is a massive, massive betrayal of the working class across India, migrant and non-migrant. I don't think we have had such a dramatic, open, obscene betrayal in our history, actually, where basically the middle class and the elite have declared that we don't care what happens to you. You are around only to work for us, to provide services, to produce for us. and we will not give you any of the rights that we take for granted ourselves. I think that betrayal is something very deep, and it's going to take a very long time to correct. I do not know what the consequences of this will be. I don't think this is something that we can just say, oh, when we lift the lockdown and everybody can, that everything will go back to where it was. I think there is a much more fundamental rupture that has occurred, and we really have to work actively to somehow rectify that rupture. Migrants, as I think you also mentioned, and everybody has said, all of you have said this, right? Everyone wants to go back home. It's not just the income earning capacity, it is the loss of dignity, the loss of trust, the knowledge that at any time, not only can your entire world be turned upside down so you have no access to anything, but that you will not then be trapped as a prisoner. You will not be allowed to leave and beaten when you try and go back even on your own. So I think that betrayal is a very, very large betrayal. The sooner we make the middle class and elite realize that this is the betrayal that will come back to bite us in a very big way, I think the more likely we are to get government policies that are more oriented to their welfare.
Absolutely. It's really been such a shock, and in one way, it's for the first time people are seeing visuals and news about the lakhs and crores of workers who we thought didn't exist, and our work was happening. I mean, they formed the basis of everything we call civilization. It's really been a shock to the whole fabric of our country. I've been prompted to say that I must announce that if people have questions, to please put them on YouTube, and we have somebody who's helping communicate the questions you put on YouTube to us. Now, I also want to open out, and this is pretty much a second last question. I'm saving my last question for the end. Digital technology played a huge role in trying to provide relief. Many times, I mean, like I was speaking to one of the authors of the report, Anandita, she mentioned that phone became such a absolute minimum कि phone के बगैर तो ये करते ही कैसे was I mean, one thought. But obviously going beyond the phones, where did we see efforts used by governments to use technology to try and increase the outreach of relief, like e-rations through websites, where e-ration coupons through the website, where did it help and where did it create more problems? We've seen Bihar, Jharkhand start apps, mobile applications for registration of stranded workers ताकि उन तक एक direct benefit transfer हो, और जैसे मैंने already कहा e-ration coupons बने. तो कहाँ पे कठिनाई बढ़ गई because of this introduction of technology in outreach, and where could it actually help? If we could get one or two examples.
Yeah, let me go. So, Rakshita, as you already mentioned, those apps from Bihar and Jharkhand, those were indeed helpful. I mean, there were some technical glitches, but I talked to many people from Jharkhand, Bihar, and they mentioned that indeed they received 1,000 rupees after registration, after getting registered on the app. So, I was surprised that, okay, there is some system in place and it was working. Of course, it was possible because of the technology. I mean, although there were some issues like they can only get money if their account is in Jharkhand or Bihar. If they're working here and their account is in some bank branch in Karnataka, then they won't get. But at least up to certain extent, many people got that money. They received it. They have used it, which is a nice thing. It also created some problems. For example, when a lot of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka released some links or website links for, let's say, for if you want to go home, if you want to register, or there are some links. So, first of all, those links were in either local language or in English. Now, primarily migrant workers are from Bihar, Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh, and also, which was not helpful for them. And even I received that in Tamil Nadu, the form was really complicated, and it asks you whether you are a robot or not. So it gives you this some captcha and asks you to identify some images, which even probably under such a complicated word, which even probably I can't do it. I mean, and you are expecting some migrant worker who's not able to understand English, local language, to go through that whole process and then register. which was, of course, not helping. So yeah, some things worked, some things could have done. We could have done better. We call ourselves the IT hub of the whole world, and still,
Right,
if we cannot figure out these things, it's a shame. Yeah.
right.
So maybe only if I can just add to your question. So the Bihar app and Jharkhand app that Shantanu said was helpful. So it had a very random behavior also. So there was a person who was helping out people around him to get registered. So he got registered some 7 to 8 people successfully. They got money also, but he himself was not able to register. And he was doing it all correct, everything fine. Once randomly the message came that okay, you have been registered, and later it came your Aadhaar card didn't match. So these kind of gaps were also there. And so when we contacted the like Bihar government, we were in touch with them. So they said you send us the screenshots, we'll be able to work it out. But now for us to explain them what is a screenshot was a challenge, right? तो ये इस तरह के cases भी थे. And in e-ration coupon, I like to mention, so people were actually a little hesitant in making us do registration for them, because they were like, our Aadhaar card number, should we give you like private details? So there were some people who said we'll not give it to you. I also figured out that there were people who were making use of it. So they were charging rupees 100 to file in for e-ration coupon for people. And I was like, okay, at this time also, there are people who are making money out of this services. So there has been every kind of experiences, I would say. Yeah.
No, very useful to point out these kinds of examples. Um, if anybody doesn't have any more, does anybody have more instances they want? Jayati, yes.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I just wanted to pick up on these points. These are very important points. You know, at present, we have a maximum of 400 million smartphones in the country. And a significant proportion of them are held, one person holds 2 smartphones in the elite. So let us say there is a maximum of 350 million people who have smartphones, which means a very, very large proportion of the working population also does not have smartphones. Now, so it's not just that they're difficult to use, that is also true. I mean, somebody I know, a journalist who was trying to even download Aragya Setu, found it impossible. So, so even one that is so-called almost compulsory for everyone is extremely difficult to do. So there is the issue. It's not just the difficulty of the technology and the poor quality of many of the interfaces. A lot of these government websites and interfaces are very complicated and unduly, they're not user-friendly at all. But it is also that there's a sheer lack of access, which means all of the others will have to rely on intermediaries with the associated exploitation and so on. So I just wanted to highlight that point, quite apart from the privacy and monitoring and other issues.
No,
Just one thing
absolutely.
I would like to add.
Yes.
So, if the people stranded out of West Bengal and they want to go to West Bengal, so on the website there is one-way pass. But the almost absurdity of that form is that when you want to choose, when you try to choose the option, your mode of transport, it's only private vehicles. So you cannot. There are no special train or special buses. So basically, it's not for workers. It's not for people who actually want to travel right now. So yeah, that so it's an issue with a lot of websites, but with West Bengal's websites very well.
Right. It also indicates the lack of a feedback loop. I mean, even if a technology is deployed, if people are finding difficulties in how to go through it, then what kind of a number can be contacted that can provide SOS assistance? If there are difficulties, how to go about it. So I think the lack of those systems being in place have also shown. I mean, I also want to take advantage of my role as a moderator and also bring Rajasthan's example, actually, that they started a helpline. I mean, it was a helpline that was being used, Rajasthan Sampark. And actually, when they deployed it to serve as a helpline for SOS, they started getting calls to the tune of about 65,000 calls a day. And we saw how difficult it was for people to receive requests, communicate it to departments, do a call back to the complainant to check if that's been reached. So we also saw the sheer need for actually a very clear back-end system behind the technology which constantly engages with the complainant at all points. So how many of these currently launched digital applications have that is also a question. There are now questions coming in from the people who are watching this webinar. But, I also want to ask, I'll mix these questions along with my last question to you all also, that what Swan was a network, and there are many networks like Swan that have come together, collectives who are trying to provide critical assistance during this time of distress. What do you all see your role as now going forward? Because the definition of the crisis is also changing. Now, migrant workers are going back to their homes doesn't mean that crisis has ended. Like Preeti had indicated, there's a different crisis back home. So what do you think you all want to try and keep working towards to keep the public pressure on this issue alive? And how do you want to ally with more friends and institutions over time? So please do keep that thought in mind, and maybe those could be your last comments before we close the call, but to start thinking about it. Now I want to ask questions that are coming. So first question is actually to Jayati. What particularly is going to be the status of farmers and the Kharif season during this lockdown?
Yes, that's a very good question, and I think this Anubhav has a number of other questions before, which are also extremely important. So, the problem is not even Kharif, it's already the Rabi, because we have found that cash crop cultivators and horticulture and so on are facing huge problems in marketing, because many of the mandis were closed, and even the public procurement in some states like Punjab and so on, they have actually made an effort and done a lot of public procurement, but only of the major food grains, and a whole bunch of other crops. There's really been very poor arrangements. So very few of the mandis were open. Many of them, even when they were open, they functioned for very few days. There was difficulty. Farmers had to bribe massively to be allowed their transport, the trucks to reach the mandis. And so we find that horticulture supplies have also been dramatically eroded. And yet they are getting less to nothing for their crop. So there are also many cases of farmers just damaging their crop, destroying it, throwing it into fields in despair because of the very, very low prices that they're being offered. So even for the Rabi, which is all ready to cut and so on, we have a lot of distress, especially in North and Central India, in just accessing the market and getting a decent price. The funny thing is, of course, that the farmers are getting very low prices, and in urban areas, people are paying more because essentially the lockdown has completely destroyed the supply chain and the distribution channels. So that's one important area. For Kharif, a very major concern, it's not yet the sowing period. We are going to look forward to that sowing period. But we don't know how long this lockdown is going to continue. And we do know that the government has announced that all essential commodities, etc., will be allowed. But allowing is very different from enabling. And in fact, they've done nothing to enable. So you see, even farmers, they need seeds, they need fertilizers, they need pesticides, they need agricultural implements, they need those to be serviced, they need all kinds of things. And of course, in many parts of the country, they also need migrant labor. A lot of agriculture also depends on migrant labor. Now, in effect, we have not really ensured any of these things. And as our farmers' incomes are also destroyed over the Rabi, they are less likely to have enough money, especially the small and marginal farmers, to pay proper wages for the sowing of the Kharif. And so we really have to now think of creative ways to use the NREGA. We have to, first of all, dramatically expand the rural employment guarantee and create an urban employment guarantee. But in the NREGA, we have to now actually think actively of how we can also put it to the service of agriculture. because agriculture is being affected. We cannot say that it's somehow impervious to all of this terrible thing that is going on. They are also being affected. And of course, that's absolutely essential. So we need to also address the issue of farming. But cash crop cultivators are hugely badly affected, which is why the demands that Rakshita and all of us have been associated with are asking for cash transfers over the next 3 to 6 months for families across the board, independent of what they do. All 80% of the population should get by household cash transfers of 7,000 per month minimum. And that would at least enable everyone to keep going. Of course, NREGA is a very important lifeline, and it has to be expanded to 150 people per days per worker. That is not per household, but per adult. And ideally set up an urban employment guarantee. Along that, there's some states that have already begun to think about this. But we have to think now of how to merge these with the need to ensure the supply of essential commodities and items of mass consumption, because all of those are being affected by the lockdown and will continue to be affected by the lockdown. They will not just emerge, on their own independently without a problem. Anubhav had another question. Could I answer that, or should I just let
Yes.
others?
If you could also repeat the question so that...
Sure, yes. So, Anubhav had talked about how would a central government, I had talked about how state governments don't have money, and so the central government has to provide it. How would the central government decide on equitable distribution? And that's a very good question. It's true, because, we know that all migrants are not in all states and so on. So this is not something that you can easily decide, because we don't actually have proper numbers of the number of migrants in every state. But what we do know is that it's not only migrants, it's also local people who have lost their livelihoods and are affected, who are also going to be in great distress and in need of some assistance. So insofar as monies are distributed, they should be distributed according to an existing formula. And we have a formula that the Finance Commission has provided to states. Let the money that is provided be distributed according to the Finance Commission formula, which is a combination of population per capita income and various other things. I would say that if the government really wants to be transparent, PM Cares, we have no idea how much money has been accumulated in that, but it is meant for distress relief. PM Cares should be distributed to the state governments according to the Finance Commission formula, because that would show that this is actually money that has been distributed for relief.
Right. And actually, Suhas Palshikar had written in an op-ed that it is true that everybody cares, not just the PM. So clearly that fund is meant for a lot more people than just the Prime Minister. Now it's another question that's come up is actually the use of RTI is very interestingly. Have there been any attempts to file RTIs with state governments to get more information, or are there any thoughts in that direction? This question is open to all. The dead silence speaks for itself. But I think it's just a general comment. Neha, do you want to say something?
So we are not, I think we are not sure of it, but I'm sure there are people who are trying it out, but can't comment on it since we are not very sure. So, yeah.
Right. This actually leads up to another question that's being asked. Apparently, Yogendra Yadav also tweeted the Swan report, the 32 days and counting, and mentioned that this is going to be a critical reading for future historians. So the question that's being asked is, how do you think this report can act as a message for future academics and administrators? So, I mean, one question is, where all has this report been disseminated and communicated to? And even amongst you all, I know that some of you are studying and are currently in academia. Where do you see your own learning of what further academics research could look like through your own involvement with this report? If anyone wants to answer that question.
I mean, This report really highlights a lot of problems that has been, I mean, that migrant worker faced, and probably I can, let's say, give the benefit of doubt to the government. Okay, initially they couldn't anticipate, although they have tried few things, but it was too little, too late. But going forward, now they know. Okay, for example, you're saying this can act as a report for historians. So now they know what to do, what not to do, what worked, what didn't work, and so definitely there are a lot of learning lessons, especially regarding public distribution, how migrants who are coming from the different state, residing in different state, they are getting denied ration. So now they can fix the system. Okay, if they have ration, some ration card or somewhere else, they should be able to use it. It's any other place. For example, Professor Ghosh already mentioned it. So we have learnings from this state and from this thing that okay, how what problems it can create, or what existing system can create the problems and how we can fix it. I think it will give us a lot of insights. It's just so a lot of, reports I think highlights a lot of those kind of issues for sure.
Right. Thanks. Neha, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to add, yeah. So I was just reading another study. It was done about the plague epidemic that happened way back, right? So it also the study that I was reading about, it talks about how there's a lack of social trust and basically lack of trust on the government, right? So if you see European country or some other countries which are doing well right now, even despite lockdown, is also because there's a trust in the government. Citizens have that trust. Now the quote that Preeti just said, right? कि हम अपने ही देश में पराये हो गए हैं. This shows the intensity of mistrust or distrust or the people or citizens of the country have in the government. And this is something which is across era it has been. So that is something which will be, help us out. And of course, the we are talking about what now, but we also have to think what next, right? We are saying that we'll go back to normal, but what kind of normal life we are talking about? We are still not talking about those climatic issues, the environmental issue. Vizag incident just happened today, right? And still there is no conversation around it. So we have to think about that as well.
Right, absolutely. Jayati, if you can come in.
I
Jyoti,
think
you're
Preeti,
mute.
okay, I think Preeti also wanted to say something. Should we let Preeti speak first?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, thank you, Jyoti. Just on the question on that, how I mean migrant workers. So I feel that the lockdown is it's a kind of a mirror for all of us. Yeah, like how social security is a poor for migrant workers. I mean, look at the one. I mean, you have just shut down, and the most vulnerable has come to the very vulnerable zone. Like, so the social security is the some very important thing which we need to, as academician, as a policy makers, we need to think what kind of a social security we have provided to the workers, which are the backbone for all of us, for everyone. I mean, so that's the one thing. And as well as the one thing that's Neha, just I will build on that what Neha said, that I mean, we are not actually reflecting that why this whole lockdown, this disease, and everything is there, because there's something questioning the present sort of a lifestyle we are running through, and it actually just my understanding that it demands an alternative lifestyle, and that we are not actually brainstorming and not talking on that, and we are just actually thinking to immediate address of the present need, not related to just I'm talking about this thing in the overall context for each and every us, that why this is happening, and we need to brainstorm that something is not working what we are thinking it's working, whether it's a capitalism, whether it's a the kind of a lifestyle commercialization, whatever, but we need to think on that and brainstorm on more on that and engage more discourse on this, that what should be the next. Yeah, thank you, Jyoti.
Yeah, thank you. So I, in the middle, I also now noticed that there are two questions from Hemant and from Gaurav, so I'll just answer those first. Hemant is saying, haven't we helped the central government continue to be sanguine and do nothing for relief, since all of us in civil society jumped in to address the problem? Well, I confess, I think that is clearly what the central government wanted. It wanted to palm off the responsibility, first to state governments and then to civil society. But let's face it, we cannot do what a government can do. So despite all the best efforts of networks like Swan and a lot of other young people and other volunteers out there, we are really a drop in the ocean in terms of the requirement. And this is ultimately a government responsibility. So while it's very important to do this, because of the fact that the government has disappeared, we cannot substitute for the government. So I don't think that this is, this is a government that is apparently quite sanguine anyway. It seems to be not really bothered about what is happening. I don't know whether our not doing anything would make it more bothered. I think it's really a deeper thing where they feel they don't have to be accountable. Anubhav says that, do you think going forward the states need to quickly revise and increase their minimum wages through immediate amendments? Ideally, absolutely. I fear that the opposite will happen. I fear that, in fact, minimum wages will be stabilized at this level because, remember, state governments have no money. And at the moment, employers also, very, very few of them have money. Because what we've done is devastated an economy, right? We have got now 2 months of no economic activity, which means that pretty much the entire system is short of resources, except the central government. I want to repeat this over and over again. The central government is the one agency left in the country that actually can mobilize resources directly from the central bank. And so that demand we have to keep putting out there. It's the central government. The only agency that can do it is the central government, can expand its spending, and we have to force them to do. And there is Gaurav has asked, I hope one potential outcome of the Swan report is to create sufficient infrastructure and technology for handling the next economic crisis, next migrant crisis, which can arise out of pandemic and climate change. I'm very glad you asked that question, Gaurav, because it links into what Preeti was saying, and I think what all of you have been saying. So, let me tell you, Rakshita, you had begun by saying, what are the learning, what is the sort of use you can make of this in education? And I can tell you as a teacher, what I found so useful about the Swan report. Of course, as what Shantanu said, that, it helps in public policy. It helps us to understand the nature of the problem, the different kinds of constituents of this issue of the migrant. But it also helps us to understand the Indian economy in a better way. I think, too often people think rural and urban are separate. We don't see the interlinkages. And one very, very important fundamental linkage is labor. That, the labor of rural India is what is building urban India or allowing urban India to continue and survive and persist and grow. So when we say urban economy has grown by this much, etc., we don't realize how much of it is based on rural. Similarly, the incomes generated by those migrants are what enables the rural economy to survive, despite all the terrible policies we have towards agriculture. In fact, agriculture would have collapsed without this migration money, the remittances coming from these workers in the urban areas. So there's a deep symbiotic relationship, which I think many people were unaware of, even economic students and development students. And I think that is very well brought out by this report. So it's not just the public policy. I think it's going to be an important development text in future. And I'm very, very grateful that Swan and all of you young people have contributed to such an excellent and informative report on this. And finally, just to take up the points that Anubhav and Hemant and Preeti and all have been making, this is really, in a way, a first indication of what a really, really bad crisis looks like. And so far, we've been talking about climate change, but let's face it, it's been broadly theoretical. We have seen it as something in the future, something going to happen, little bit on the outskirts, or you get, sometimes you get a major flooding or an earthquake and people talk about extreme weather events. We don't see it as something huge that can come and turn everything upside down. I think this pandemic is making us realize that these things can happen, that these extraordinary events are not just, possible, they're likely. And we have to be prepared for them, that we have to be, as a society, creating the resilience in all our people and in an equitable way. So I think there are 2 or 3 important ways in which this pandemic, if we can persuade the rest of society to talk about these questions, it can actually contribute to a better future. The first is the huge importance of care. We completely underestimate care. We haven't mentioned, people talk even about migrants, they say construction, manufacturing industry. So much domestic work, nursing, care, all the care economy also is done by migrant workers. And the huge importance of frontline care work is something that we are going to realize more and more and more. It's not just the equipment, it's not just the medicines, it's not just the vaccine, it's the people who are actually going to be around to do the care, the nursing, the medical, all the the preventive, all of those things, the therapeutic, all of those activities. So the significance of care, the need to value it, the need to recognize it, the need to give those workers dignity, protection, proper remuneration, all of that, I think, it should become something very big on the table. The second is that when we come out of this, it's not just how we live our lives, but how we construct our economies and societies. We're clearly living in an impossible way. And of course, we are maybe less impossible than others, but because we're such an unequal society, the elite among us, we live in a very impossible way. And we have to rethink a lot of those. We have to rethink how we design our economies, how we ensure that production doesn't fall into the same trap. The danger is what is already happening, that the government will be so anxious to get the economy going again that they will relax all the environmental restrictions. They've just done that 2 days ago. They will not try and make companies compensate for things like a gas leak. And the danger is that we will go in the opposite direction. That's why it's very important to make society aware of how that direction is completely unsustainable. And it's not unsustainable in the future, it's unsustainable tomorrow. It's going to happen very, very quickly that we cannot cope. So I think that's the second very important lesson that can come out of this kind of thing. And I think finally, especially for all of you young people, and I'm so happy that there are all these young people involved in this. It's really, I said it at the beginning, but I have to tell you again, it's the only thing that gives me hope in a very, very depressing time otherwise. I think, you have a much greater challenge. Your generation has a much greater challenge than ours did. There's no doubt about it. But I think already there are so many of you showing the sensitivity, flexibility, and the courage that is required to face these challenges. So I think one of the things I just want to say to all of you, not just thank you, but really, please do have confidence in yourselves, because I think young people like you, and the fact that you can generate quickly so many volunteers and that you can spread this word, you have to be so much more confident about what you're doing and confident about spreading all of the knowledge that you've gained and the information and the analysis that you're making. So really, I would encourage you to do that more and more.
Thank you, Jayati. I now do want to, because we now are left with just some 6-8 minutes of this conversation. I mean, we can start with Preeti. I do want to open this question out to what do you think as Swan and other collaborations that have come about, what do you think your attention would be going forward? How do you want to be engaged in this initiative to respond to a crisis which is changing in form? So Preeti, if you could come in and also respond to this question, and these could be our closing comments in a way.
Thank you, Rakshita. So the one thing what Jayati said, so I just want to build on that so in our Swan report is a very detailed report. The first thing, because and we have also talked to these workers very in detailed manner. They have cried with us. They have also shared their vulnerabilities. So the report is more like a lot of our emotional work is involved. It's just not a report, and it's all voluntary. So that Rajendran and the team, they have started in 27th March, and we know them, so we just started. So it's just because it's a very detailed report where you will find the cases, and so it will be definitely useful for so many things to understand migrant workers, to understand crisis, as well as the Jati said, the economy. Definitely one thing I just say that in report also, and we have also talked to the workers, that good amount of workers really want to leave the present work where they are working in different cities, and they want to continue in the rural areas wherever they have come. And जब मैं पूछती हूँ उनसे कि आप क्यों यहाँ पर आए हैं, तो don't you want to work in your village? He said, मैडम जी, अगर हमारे गांव में रोजगार होता तो इतना सुंदर गांव छोड़ के नहीं आते, हम अपने अपनों को नहीं छोड़ के आते हैं. And that it made me speechless. Yeah. And then that will be a big challenge for economy and as well as for the government to how to strengthen the rural economy. I mean, how to actually be allow them have how to actually allow the choices to them, because rural people have they have no choice. They have to force themselves to go and earn outside in different cities and do and live a like a slum they do. So this is also an opportunity to all of us to think, as a Swan report has been very detailed manner, it has shown that how come how we can make the rural economy more strengthened, more self-sufficient, that it is just a choice that they, if they want to go and do the work and do the anything outside, it should be choice, not should be forced. Because as if we know that Manrega is the only employment guarantee scheme we have in the rural areas. Other than that, we don't have any you can say a very good scheme that can actually generate the employment. So I think that in future it is going to be a big challenge when after the whole travel thing is going to solve, that most very good population is going to stay in rural area, and how government and as well as the over there how will we address it. That's the one thing. And on the question of Swan, that how we take it, so I'm still, I mean, this is something we haven't thought out of any organization or anything. It's just a immediate answer just with our heart that we really wanted. We could see that Prime Minister announced in the midnight, I mean 8 o'clock, and like, okay, let's lock down everything. We thought that it would be some sort of arrangement, but it is not. So with that background, we have tried to share our portion which we can. As Jyoti said, it's a drop in ocean. So, but we haven't thought much how would you we go, but definitely it will be a joint discussion with all of us. How can we go ahead with that? And if there is some opportunity to work with the same arrangement, we will definitely do. Yeah.
Great, great. Thank you. Neha, any last comments?
Um, So, adding to what Preeti, I think Preeti has beautifully summarized what I think most of us are feeling right now. This only employment guarantee scheme we have in rural sector, but there is also a need, as Jayati pointed out, about something for urban setting also. So, urban spaces are surviving and breathing on the labor forces, right? And we have not acknowledged them till now, and we have to acknowledge them, give them their credit. And this relationship of urban and rural can be a really beautiful relationship. So we have to work towards it right now. I think that's something I can say. And we, while we are catering to what is happening right now, we also have to think what is a normal life we are we going to resume, or what are we going to reflect on it. So yeah, and with respect to Swan, we are also trying so that people, those who want to go back home, must go back home. And just to figure out, so we have also started a portal in which we are trying to collate the travel details. So you just have to enter from which state to which state, and there is a detailed description you will get. So many of the states we don't have the websites working till now, but we are going to update it as and when we get it. So this is right now we are going to do, and of
Okay,
course we'll work on the relationship. So yeah.
thank you. Nitish, last comments?
Yeah. When it comes to Swan, the way we are working is depending on what workers need, what they want, what is the requirement of the hour. When they wanted money, we tried our best to send money, and the report rightly says so that we have transferred as of now 22 lakhs, as far as I remember. And now I think where we are heading is that we'll try our best that all those people who want to head back home, we try our best to do things. We have been filling forms from our side only for Goa. For each and every person, we fill form ourselves online because they don't have access, and even if they do, they don't have any idea uh, about how to fill forms and all. And yeah, so I think how we will go ahead with the work is that we'll change the way we will work when we get to know what is the need of the workers, and I think it will change drastically uh, in the days coming.
Right, truly democratic answer. Shantanu,
Yeah, I think all of them already mentioned a lot. So, as you already know, I mean, Swan is a very growing very organically. I mean, daily things are changing. We are catering the needs depending on what is required, as Nitish mentioned. So, yeah, going forward, I think the needs are changing. How migrant can go from one place to other. Can we do something at another point? And I'm sure we are still receiving because many of them are staying back. I mean, even the report mentioned that because they cannot do anything, even if they go to their village. If they are staying with the family, then they would like to stay back. So we are still getting calls, and I think that will continue for a while for sure. And the nature of the work will change. I mean, for example, today we experienced that there are some, I mean, one employer is threatening the evictions from their home. So probably we have to deal with different departments, we have to deal with different government things, but I think it will continue for a while. And
Right.
yeah, so
No, right.
we hopefully Swan will also continue for a while, depending on the needs of the
Yeah,
workers.
no, we better make sure it's running more than hope. We we all need you
Oh
to
yeah, yeah,
continue, and Swan needs to
yeah.
get bigger. And I'm sure even after watching this, a lot more people will try to contact you all on how they can help. So
Yeah.
shukriya to all of you really for making time and for sharing these insights. And we will on this website or on through this link share the report. And yeah, thank you. And it's the beginning of a conversation, I guess. And I also just want to sum it out with it. It's one really saw just at an immediate level what surfaced, and also for the country what has surfaced. And even conversations like the public services, I mean, just where privatization, how many steps it took us back and how much forward we need to go in terms of public provisioning of basic services, how we imagine urbanization economy in an alternative way, how I mean our definition of who is a true patriot in our country should change. It's actually workers, it's frontline functionaries. They're running and saving our lives, and we have a very different conception of who a patriot or a nationalist is. And I think most importantly, it also showed the importance of maintaining and protecting an alternate narrative, which is what the Swan report helped us put out there. So it was not just anecdotal or stories of emotion, but facts, figures, testimonies recorded, and an alternate reality emerging from what the reality government is projecting. So thank you to all of you, and we will continue to be in touch with you all and rope you into all kinds of campaigns going forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Rakshita. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Rakshita. Thank you all. Thank you, Jayati.